Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Fright Lounge, the show in which the best horrologists in town will discuss horror in depth and get a conversation going for seasoned horror viewers, as well as helping introduce newbies to the horror genre, not the horror. I am your host, Re-Gor. I'm from the podcast Then Is Now East Meets the West and the Cult Movie Lounge. And we're having technical troubles today, so you're not getting this live, unfortunately, but you're going to get it in a rebroadcast.
The
And my
Matrix is
co-host
glitching.
is
Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is everything fuzzed out there for a minute on my end, the audio?
sorry.
I am Bill Van Ryn, editor of fanzine Drive-In Asylum, and curator of Facebook page Groovy Doom.
Awesome. And we are joined once again today by Michael. We're glad to have you back, Michael.
Thank you so much. I've been killing quite a bit, so rather than list all the names of people, I just go by my kill. Yeah, there's a
Excellent.
there's a
All
pile
right,
of
folks.
people in the basement. Oh, by the way, your sorry, your name, Roger, it says Re-Got on your screen.
Re-Got. Oh, I
Instead of
may have to
Re-Gor.
fix that. Let's see if I can fix that.
It's like a robot Re-Gor, maybe.
Re-Got
It's a
is
Re-Got.
Re-Got backwards.
Like a fembot, a regot.
I'm a fembot.
Toger.
Well, you wouldn't be a fembot, so you'd have to be a regot.
I'd be a
Rebot.
I'd be a yogurt.
Yogurt. Reject.
Oh my god.
Anyway.
So folks, we've got a crazy lineup for you. Obviously, we're not live, unfortunately. Bill, if you could put something on Facebook and YouTube and just apologize to the viewers.
I sure will.
That'd be awesome. So we got a crazy lineup for you guys tonight. We're going to discuss Phenomena, Squirm, and Slugs. And of course, now I want to make another apology here because I couldn't remember the third film I wanted to pick. So I picked Phenomena. I was thinking, let's do a Dario Argento film, and I know that Michael is not all that well versed in Italian horror films. And Bill was like, great. I'll pick something to go with that. And I picked Phenomena, and he was like, all right, let's do Squirm. I'm like, great. And I had seen a film that I wanted to show, and I couldn't remember the name of it. I couldn't find it, and I know that I watched it on Tubi. And when I looked at Tubi was like, oh, well, you've been watching Slugs. And I'm like, no, this film I hadn't heard of. And Tubi was like, no, it's Slugs. And I'm like, no, it's a film that I don't think I've heard of. And Tubi was like, no, it's Slugs or Weird Al or something. And I was like, all right, fine. So I picked Slugs. I looked at it too, like several times over the past week. And I was like, I don't think this is the film, but all right, it goes with the theme, so I'll pick it. And then, of course, today I found out that it was a film called Blue Monkey. Nothing to do with Slugs. I mean, there are slugs in it, but yeah, it was called Blue Monkey. And in fact, that's why when I looked at it, I was like, oh, I don't think I've heard of this movie, which I actually had, because now that I think about it, I have it on VHS somewhere. I recorded it somewhere. I don't think I actually ever watched it before, because I'm watching it, a week ago, and I'm going, I've never heard of this movie. I've never seen this movie. And I'm watching Slugs, and I'm like, I know the theme song. I know this movie. I know I've seen this many times. So next time, folks, next show, we're probably going to tackle Blue Monkey and one that Michael and I talked about called Slither with Nathan Fillion, who you may know from The Rookie and Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all those shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, so today we're just going to do Phenomena, Squirm, and Slugs.
I love Blue Monkey.
And I think I must have seen it because I know I have it on VHS, but I was watching it like a week and a half ago, and I was like, oh, I've never seen this before. This is really good, I made the wife watch it, and I fell asleep through it, and she was like, well, it was really good. You fell asleep through it.
I keep thinking, I've never heard of it before, so every time you say Blue Monkey, I think of Brass Monkey by the song by Beastie Boys. Brass Monkey. That funky. I have no frame of reference for Blue Monkey. Was there a monkey in the story at all, or was it just like something they referred to?
No, it was completely random. There was no. It's just something that there's a moment. The movie is about a giant insect. It's like a thing that turns into it bites somebody and then eggs grow inside of him and then it's like the standard alien thing but with a bug, and
Yeah.
it grows into this giant bug at the end. So that certainly is not a blue monkey. And one of the kids in the story makes something like a random remark like maybe we'll see a blue monkey.
Oh,
Right,
wow.
right.
And
You
they
know, it's
made that the
funny now that
title.
you say that, Bill. I remember that when I recorded it on VHS. Because I worked at a Blockbuster Video in the late 1980s or something. Excuse me, and I know I recorded that onto videotape. So
We do not support pirating.
no, no, it was for personal use. I never sold it.
He never sold it. It was purely for.
So before we get into all right, so our first movie is going to be Phenomena, which is a Dario Argento film. And for those who don't know, Dario Argento is a famous Italian horror filmmaker. He's made some amazing films. But I wanted to ask Michael about your experience with Italian horror. Now, I'm trying to remember, did I ever show you like the movie Demons or Suspiria or any of those Italian horror?
I know we watched it. I remember watching at least one horror movie, Italian, but I don't remember. I don't remember what it was. All I remember is there was a point in the movie. This is literally the only thing I remember. There was a point in the movie where they were in some kind of abandoned hospital or something, and there was a sign on the wall that, or on a door that said no, no,
Do not entry.
do not entry. Yes.
That's
It
the
should have said
beyond you're
no,
thinking of.
do not enter, but it said do not entry. That stuck in my head. But what movie is that, Bill?
That's the Beyond by
Okay.
Lucio Fulci.
Oh, it's a different. Okay, different
Yeah.
director.
Different director, but otherwise
But I
known
saw
as
that.
Seven Doors of Death in America.
Ah, but I know Dario Argento's name. Like I've heard it, probably from you.
I feel like I've shown you Suspiria at least because I had that on Laserdisc, or I still have it. I just
You might have.
don't have it out right now. But.
I make no claims as to the functional capacity of my memory cells.
So
in my-
the thing about Italian horror films, I think it's for. Oh, okay. I heard a beeping, but it was just the laundry machine. The thing about Italian horror films, I think you kind of have to grow up with them. Like I watched them. I've been watching them since I was a teenager, and I think like when I watched Phenomena this time around, and I had seen it before many times, I feel like you don't appreciate them until you're an adult because there's this how do I describe it? There's sort of um Bill, help me here. There's something about Italian horror films that are
An
weird.
atmosphere, a dreamlike atmosphere where nothing really makes any sense. And if you try and make it make sense, you're sort of defeating the purpose of the film.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's what I was going to say because Michael, when we were younger, you didn't like those kind of movies because if it didn't
Yeah.
make perfect sense right off the bat, you were done with it.
Right. And I hated X-Files because they had inconclusive endings and anything like that. I was like, I hate that crap. But like as I've gotten older, I'm like, I can see the value in that. So yeah.
Right.
It was the
right.
same for me. I used to be really resistant to that kind of thing, even though I did love Argento and because that's the strange thing about Argento is that now if you want to, I mean, I don't want to sound elitist or anything, but like if you talk about Argento films, like so many people have heard of Argento's films and have seen them. And there's a lot of material out there that you can talk about for Argento. And now it's almost become this elevated thing to talk about, where like, oh, it's like serious horror. And but in the 90s or the late 80s even, like that would have never been considered highbrow cinema, and it was considered to be trash, literal trash, and people laughed at you for liking these kind of movies. Like, why do you watch those stupid movies? And now like that generation got a little bit older, and now the younger generation embrace this stuff as they talk about it like the way you would talk about great literature. And I'm guilty of that too. I like to do that to all kinds of movies.
Well, and it's like, I mean, let's take Monty Python, for example, the comedy group. you know, to Americans, that was highbrow comedy. That was like, oh my God, they're like talking above our heads and it's hilarious and stuff. And when they came out, the show was on at 1 in the morning when it first premiered,
Yeah.
and it was lowbrow humor to them.
In England. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
So yeah, so all right, cool. So I just want to get kind of get a base. So Phenomena, I'm going to give a quick synopsis here. It's basically, at least according to IMDb, a young girl who has an amazing ability to communicate with insects is transferred to an exclusive Swiss boarding school in Zurich, where her unusual capability might help solve a string of murders. I think that's actually a pretty close synopsis of the film, and of course it stars Jennifer Connelly, who plays
Yes.
Jennifer Corvino.
Baby Jennifer.
Baby,
She's
yeah,
Yeah.
she's so young here. Oh my God.
so like almost unrecognizably young. Like I almost don't think I would have picked up on the fact that that was Jennifer Connelly had you not told me beforehand. Jennifer Connelly's in it. I mean, she's probably 12 or something, but you know,
I
it's
think
like her
she's more
face
like
is
15, but yeah,
different
yeah,
shape.
She's about
Yeah.
15.
yeah.
Because like, wasn't there like a movie? I don't know. I feel like the movies that she made, like just a few years later, she looked complete. Her face, especially, looked completely different. Not completely, but largely different.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh yeah. I mean, she was in that one? What's that one about the water on the ceiling? Um,
oh yeah. Well, that was
the apartment building.
right. I
Dark
can't think of the
Water.
name of it.
Was it
Dark
Oh,
Water. Yeah.
I'm
Dark
not
Water?
sure.
Yes. Yeah. And wasn't she in the Hulk? She was in like one of the Hulk movies. She was Betty Ross.
Yeah.
Was it Hulk?
She's been in tons of shit.
Yeah. You know, and this movie also has Donald Pleasance, who of course plays Professor John McGregor. Which you know, you put together, and part of the reason, Mike, why I picked this movie was because it was so American, because it had Jennifer Connelly and Donald Pleasance, even though it's like takes place in Zurich, and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. For somebody who's not well versed in the Italian horror, I was glad to have like a couple of familiar elements in the movie, like that I could anchor onto. Like, but I wanted to say something real quick, and maybe this is something that would have come up later anyway. But Bill was saying that and you were saying that these movies have a very dreamlike quality where you don't really know, like it doesn't make linear sense, and you know it's just kind of like what's going on. For me, that made it scarier at certain points because I had no idea what to expect. Like I didn't have like a framework. Oh, this is the part where they go into the and then probably this is going to happen. I had no idea what was going to. So there were like at least 4 times during the movie where I went, oh, you know, like something just happened, and I was like, I would not have seen that coming at all, you know. So yeah, like
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the chair and like, whoa, like where'd that come from, you know? Yeah.
That's one of the best things. I wish I could go back to the time before I knew what was going to happen in this movie and watch it over again like that, because it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
It's really it's one of my favorite Argentos.
Oh, good. Good. I've seen a lot of them, and I love a lot of his films. You know, in fact, this has nothing to do with anything, but it just made me think that I think, if I remember correctly, oh my God, what's his name? The guy that did Scanners. I should know his name.
The
Cronenberg.
director?
Cronenberg.
Cronenberg.
He's got a new movie out that's on like YouTube or Netflix or something.
Uh-huh.
But it just makes me think because Argento's most recent films haven't been all that good.
Mm.
You know, what did he do? He did Dracula, and then I think Stendhal Syndrome was before that, Bill?
Oh yeah, Stendhal Syndrome was way back there.
Yeah.
That was like 96 or 97.
Yeah.
And then afterwards he did a remake of, either before or after that, he did Phantom of the Opera,
Right.
which was really bad. I mean,
Yeah.
I should go back and watch it again because it was like young Bill bad. Like we were saying earlier, how you were very resistant and you wanted the movies to make sense. I
Yeah.
don't really know if it's as bad as I thought it was, but it was a letdown because the last great Argento film, arguably, is his 87 film Opera.
Right.
And that really held up to all that had come before it. And then after that, it becomes the fans will start fighting with each other about whether this movie was up to par or not. But then there was the Stendhal syndrome. Dracula came much later, and there was a movie called Sleepless in there, I think 2001, which was sort of a return to form for him.
Right.
Another one called The Card Player, which is I think was made for TV. It was an Italian made for TV film. Still violent, still shocking. They can get
Yeah.
away with a lot more, I guess, there. Um, and recently I haven't seen his most recent film, which the name totally escapes me. Dark Glasses, I think.
Dark Glasses. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Um, we just said Dark Water, so I was questioning myself as to whether that really was the name. But yeah, this is Phenomena, I would say, is up there with the best of his work. And when people talk about the best of Dario Argento, they're going to say like Suspiria is probably the first thing that someone would say, and then Deep Red,
Yeah.
Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which was
Yep.
his very first feature-length film, the first giallo that he made. All of those, and I think this stands up there with them.
Now, before I get into the question I just had that you made me think of, um, I guess I'm just gonna get into that because
Go
I'll
ahead.
come back to what I was thinking. Oh no, what I was gonna say was Michael.
Yeah.
So, are you familiar with the actress Asia Argento or Asia Argento, as she's been called?
Again, the name, yes, but I couldn't
She was
conjure
in
up an
Land of the
image.
Dead. She was in Triple X with Vin Diesel.
Oh, she was in Triple. Okay.
She's
I,
Dario Argento's daughter.
ah,
But
okay.
so
Huh.
anyways, the question Bill I had was, do you think this film is a giallo?
No, it's not giallo, but it does have giallo elements. It's just sort of Dario Argento not fitting into a box. That's all. You can't really call this a giallo because it's too far over the top, and there's a lot of a giallo would be much more. There would be a little bit more mystery in a giallo, I think, and also it's not really about. It's about too many things to be giallo. I think it's more horror
Right,
than giallo, but there are giallo elements, and there's even a black gloved killer, which is a giallo hallmark. So
right.
I don't know.
I know you guys told me before what Giallo is, but I do not remember. Could you refresh my memory?
I don't remember.
I do
Uh,
not remember.
Basically, there were in Italy. There were these novels that were crime novels that had a yellow spine on them,
Ah,
and giallo is Italian for yellow. And then they started to make these films that were sort of based on some of these crime novels and sometimes not. And
ah,
like Bill said, one of the hallmarks was you had the killer, and it was from the killer's point of view, and they had black gloves. And there are quite a few other elements to that, but a lot of these movies had all these elements. And so, Bill, do you want to sort of describe, what the elements are
is
of
it
a giallo beyond the black gloves?
is it kind of like Pulp Fiction as a genre? Like before the
Kind of.
movie Pulp Fiction, but like there were certain types of books that had a certain set of uh, common characteristics, and then it became known as Pulp Fiction as a whole group.
Right, right. And that was like
Is it
what
in
in the
that
30s and 40s, I think, were
same vein
pulp
as that,
novels in
or
America. But in
right,
Italy,
right,
they
right,
were giallos because they had the yellow spine.
and they were a little more horror related.
I think so. Bill?
They were crime novels. They were murder mysteries, basically. A
Huh.
giallo is a very stylized murder mystery that involves usually like secrets. Like there's always some sort of secret, some half-remembered clue that one of the victims, has to remember in a moment of stress.
Hmm.
There are little hallmarks to the genre, and beyond that, people have long drawn out arguments about what is and is not giallo. I'm not really one of those people. Like I really
Oh,
don't care. But
okay.
that's the probably the best way I could describe it. It's usually not supernatural, which this film Phenomena has supernatural elements in it. So that's another reason why. Although
The
Argento
Skull
did that a
film.
couple of times, there was some weird little sci-fi element in his giallo films, like Four Flies on Gray Velvet. was
Right.
I think that was his third film that he made. The final film in his loose animal trilogy he did was his first film was Bird with the Crystal Plumage. The second one was called Cat o' Nine Tails, and the third was Four Flies on Gray Velvet. And but this one goes so far into horror territory that you couldn't really call it a giallo, I don't think.
Right, right. And it's got that supernatural element. I mean, you've got Jennifer Connelly's character who can communicate somehow with insects.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that in this movie, and of course, folks, we're a spoiler podcast or we're a spoiler show. So if you haven't seen this movie, it's on Tubi. So go watch the damn movie and
Yeah.
then come back and watch this. Because
Yeah.
Donald Sutherland, Donald Sutherland, Donald Pleasance says to her, I can't, in my notes, I had to keep crossing out Sutherland and write Pleasance. Um, he says to her, there's two people that can solve this crime. And she's like, oh, really? Who? He's like, you and me. Me to you. Me to you. No. Sorry, Michael. I was just thinking of that.
That's okay.
But, you know, and he says that, and it's like, oh. And then he says, yeah, this little fly, which has what, a lifespan of 48, 64 hours, whatever. He's going to lead you to the killer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he does.
And he does, sort of.
Yeah. Doesn't he say something like, we're the only two that can figure it out, but there's only two detectives who can actually follow up on the lead? And she's like, because he's in a wheelchair, and she's like, who? And doesn't he say like you and the bug? Like, am I
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
I might be misremembering the scene.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And, you know, and that's the thing, you know, Argento was all about the visuals. It didn't matter if the story made a complete sense or there
Yeah.
was complete continuity.
Yeah.
It was about what you were seeing. And this time around, when I was watching it, that's what I was getting out of it. I was like mesmerized by what I was watching, and I didn't care really about the story. I mean, I did because I wanted to know what was going to happen and how they were going to solve the crime and who was the killer. I mean, that's the big thing too, is like you got this girl that goes to a boarding school because her father's off on business, and her friend tells her, her newfound friend tells her, there's a killer going around killing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like
the killer.
Yeah.
She's like, but she's not really that upset by it. Like, that's one of the things I like about Jennifer Connelly's character in this, is that even though she's a young girl, she's pretty self-possessed. Like, she kind of just takes the things in and like, okay, she doesn't like freak out or get over emotional about everything that's happening to her, you know?
Right.
She's just like, oh, that's really strange. Okay, you know?
Yeah.
Remember the speech she gives about how on her mother abandoned the family on Christmas Day?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was true and autobiographical of Argento.
Oh, really?
Yes. That speech that she gives is what really happened to Dario Argento in real life.
Wow.
That sucks.
It's funny because, I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, it's ironic because it made me think of that speech that Phoebe Cates gives in Gremlins, where she's talking about how her father climbed up the chimney and was going to pretend to be Santa Claus, and then he slid down and he died, and they didn't find him till 3 days later.
No.
But to know that was real, that's horrifying. Oh my God.
Yeah. It explains a lot.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, especially the way this movie is presented, it's very dreamlike, you know, as you said, Bill, earlier. You know, especially when Jennifer Connelly just supposedly is sleepwalking, and then she ends up getting hung by her bathrobe belt.
Coat. Yeah, or bathrobe belt or trench coat or whatever she put
on.
Yeah.
It was just like,
that was one of those moments where I was like, whoa, because she's walking along and it's very kind of easy, slowish kind of scene, and then all of a sudden she just falls, you know, like whoosh, and I was just like, what's like, I thought she was just going to go back in the bedroom, you know. I didn't see that coming at all.
Did you ever have that moment when you're falling asleep and you feel like you've fallen off the edge of the bed?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened to her for real. She woke up and she really was dangling from a very high place because she was sleepwalking, and then she woke up.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
No.
I really want to watch it again. Like I just watched it 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, and you wish I had had time to watch it twice before today. But like, yeah, even though, like you said, Roger, even though when I was younger I used to hate stuff like this, like I really want to go see it. I want to watch it again because it was so interesting and just random. And I can imagine getting high. No, I mean, I never got into drugs, but I can imagine being like high and watching a movie like this where it's like
So can I,
non-linear
Michael.
storytelling. What?
I can imagine that too, Michael.
It's just
Mike-
a hypothetical.
Michael. I like saying it like Judith Myers says
Yeah.
in Halloween. Michael.
Michael.
Why are you killing me while I'm nude? You know, and it's funny. One thing I always used to, one criticism when I was younger, I'm going to say my late teens, early 20s, about Italian horror films was I always felt like they never put the music in the right place and they would put loud rock and roll
Oh my
music
God,
in the wrong
yes.
places.
Yes.
But I think it actually kind of works this time in this movie.
Yeah. It's so bizarre. And then they put it during scenes where like nothing's happening. Like she's just walking quietly through the woods looking around. And it's
Yeah. Iron Maiden's, what is it? Flash of the blade is blasting. And
Yeah.
she's literally just walking.
Yeah. But it was so off that it worked. Like it just didn't match up at all. And that by itself, somehow that lack
Well,
of...
imagine being in a theater and you hear that. It would be like watching a music video, you know?
Right. It's like
So-
I loved it, even though I didn't know why they made that choice. I loved it.
Well, Bill, that begs the question. Did Argento do music videos before he did films?
No,
You know?
he was too old for that kind of thing. I mean,
Oh,
like
okay.
that was way before his time, or way after, rather. He was way before that. I mean,
Right. Okay.
I don't know if he ever did later. It seems like something, if he hasn't done that, he should. Like some band would pay him a shit ton of money probably to make a video for their rock band.
I mean,
But,
because that was around the time, you know, Russell Mulcahy would have been doing music videos and then went on
Yeah.
to make like Highlander and stuff, you know? So I thought it was interesting too that, you know, you got the bugs and the chimpanzee that lead her to Donald Pleasance.
I hate chimpanzees. I don't know why. I love it. Animals in general, I just love. But every time there's a chimp in something, I'm always like, oh God. Like,
We
I
just
don't know what
talked-
it is.
we just talked about this on the show that I do on Saturday nights. Last night we watched Shakma. It's like a killer baboon movie from 1990 starring Christopher Atkins. And we were talking, everybody talked about how much they hated monkeys and, you know, how freaky it was knowing that there was this, you know, I just don't trust them. I mean, they're super strong. They're
neither.
unpredictable. Like they can
Yeah.
kill you, you know, easily,
Right.
as Shakma proves.
And then people like, I mean, baboons are fucking scary. I mean, they're like half ape, half werewolf or something. I don't know what they are, but like, yeah, chimps, they always seem to try to portray chimps as if they're like friendly and they're our closest, you know, genetic neighbor. And we're just buddies because look how smart they are. And I'm like, that thing could rip your arms off.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Chimps have like bitten people's faces off in real
Yeah.
life.
I remember that.
They'll grab your nuts and tear them right off your body.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It almost happened to
scary
me.
as shit.
What?
It did?
I'm kidding, because he said ripping your nuts off. A chimpanzee. I was caught in a precarious position with a chimpanzee. It was like that movie Nope. Did you guys see Nope?
No.
Is it any good?
Oh, that's a plot element in Nope. A chimpanzee that killed a bunch of people on a TV set,
Oh,
a TV show set.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
wow.
But I thought it was funny though that, you know, Jennifer Connelly, like Donald Pleasance basically tells her, well, you're giving the bugs the mating call. You're exciting the bugs.
Yeah. The bug was on her hand, and he was like, oh, he's really, you know, stimulated and aroused by you.
He's happy to see you.
That's kind of a creepy conversation to have with a girl that young, you know, but she wasn't phased at all. She was like, oh, that's fascinating.
But I thought it was interesting though that like the doctors were telling her that she was sort of on the path to schizophrenia, and they also said
Mm.
she was like close to getting having a dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality, which I think
Hmm.
nowadays I think that kind of falls under schizophrenia. I'm not sure. I think it's like a subcategory. But I thought it was interesting that she was like, "Oh, yeah, I might have a multiple personality." You know?
Yeah, she didn't. It didn't seem to upset her. And I remember they had her on the table. They were going to do an EEG, and they already had all the shit hooked up to her head. And she's like, "So wait a minute, what is this again?"
Yeah.
Like telling her, and she's like, "Ah, screw this. I'm not doing this."
Well, she was the daughter of a rock star, don't forget.
That's true. Yeah, 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 yeah. So
In
that's
the
her
movie or in
Knows
real
what
upbringing
kind
must
of
life?
have
shit
been.
she saw growing up.
Yeah, right, right, exactly.
Wait, in the movie or in real life?
In the movie.
The father was a rock star? I
Her
didn't get that.
father's a rock star, yeah.
I thought he
Oh.
was a scientist. Oh no,
No,
that's right. That's right. He was a rock star because the poster at the beginning and
her
the
roommate has
her
his
friend
poster on the
says,
wall, and she's
That's
like, "That's
right.
my dad."
"Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Oh,
That's right."
I forgot about that. Then he shows up, of course, and gets his head cut off like within a second.
No, that's not her dad. That's their
That's the
lawyer.
lawyer, the father's representative. Like,
Oh my God. I'm like so out to lunch.
That's yeah, that's the see, they're so super rich that she doesn't talk to her dad. She talks to their lawyer, who's really the person that she calls whenever she's in trouble. It would be the lawyer
Right.
that would
Okay.
send her the money or do whatever he had to do to get her out of whatever trouble she was in. So he shows up and gets his head cut off for all his trouble by Frau Bruckner. She's totally insane. Daria Nicolodi, who was Dario Argento's wife, is
Right.
Frau Bruckner, and of course she was in Deep Red.
Deep
She
red.
had a
Yeah.
prominent role in Deep Red, and she was in Tenebrae.
Yep.
she was
Another,
the headmistress at the house
yeah,
at
in
the
in Phenomena, she was the
the girls.
yeah, she's the killer. I mean, she takes Jennifer Connelly back to her house and imprisons her.
Right. And she goes all nutty. And
That was
she had like
her.
a son that was tied up, and we thought the son was the
Well,
killer, but it
well,
wasn't.
he was, but
He
she was a
was.
killer too. Like she killed people too, and obviously because she had all those people chained up in the basement,
Right.
and the body pit where she throws all of the victims. Jennifer Connelly falls into one of the most disturbing things that I had ever seen in a movie up to that point.
Yeah.
Is falling into a corpse, like, but all of them, like so many corpses, it was
Pit
like Poltergeist.
full of core. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, exactly like Poltergeist. It's like
Oh,
full
the
of
pit with all the maggots and
maggots.
the
Yeah.
that shocked me right out of my chair. I was like, "Oh my God." And then at first she was kind of up like this, and at one point her head went under, and I was like, "Oh my God, no, 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 no,
She's
no,
in there.
no." Yeah. Oh God, that freaked me the fuck out. And that I didn't see that coming at all. She's like walking, she turns a corner, bang, she's in this stuff. And I was like, wow, like no warning whatsoever. Not like a shot that it's there and then her coming. No, just out of nowhere.
Yeah, there's that brilliant part where she's climbing down that tunnel. She falls in there through that tunnel, but she goes in after the telephone.
The phone, that's right. The phone.
Right.
Yes.
She was looking for
Yes.
the phone. Yeah.
I gotta see this movie again. But yeah, and then she got out and like things were happening, and then finally, like she finally ended up like in the water, like real water, like in the river or lake
Yeah.
or whatever. And I was like, oh, thank God, she's finally washing that crap off of herself.
Right. When the water was pouring out on her, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the weird kid goes after her, who really was the killer in the film, because
Yeah.
I guess he was getting out and he had that cane with a switchblade or something on the end of it.
It's like a spear or something, and he was
Yeah.
like, you every time, well, not every time, but twice earlier in the movie, when before someone died, you would see the two pieces going together.
Yeah.
And then push, you know,
And that was
because
cool.
he was so short. He needed a long weapon to.
I thought that was a cool visual of the pieces like coming together and ching, you know, it was kind of
Yeah.
like the Kurgan sword in Highlander, you know, another Highlander
yeah.
reference.
I love that part where it comes through the back of the woman's head and through her mouth.
Yeah.
That was so awesome.
Always understated Dario
So-
Argento.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this woman had two boys then. She had the little one with the fangs, that was like crazy, but then she had an older boy that was chained to the wall because he ends up unchaining himself, like he breaks his hand off so he can get it through the cuff.
No, that's the
Right.
inspector. She only had
Oh,
one son. That was, and
okay.
it was the little guy who was chained to the wall.
That
The
was
guy,
the inspector?
yeah, the guy chained to the wall in the basement is the inspector that's been like following the case.
Oh.
And
Okay.
caught on to Frau Bruckner, and I think he went there first, and she clubs him on the back of the head, and then you see him later, and he's chained to the wall.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. I got confused. This movie was kind of
I
confused.
need to see it again.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Put the pieces together.
It's okay. I understand it's a lot to take in the first time you see it, because a lot of films like that, I don't really understand what happened the first time I see it either.
Well, I had seen this before, but I didn't remember any of it. So I think I've seen it like twice before this time, and I still didn't.
Yeah.
I still got to watch it again now
By
because
the
One of my
time,
favorite movies is Twitch of the Death Nerve,
oh
aka Bay
yes,
of Blood,
yeah,
by Mario Bava.
yeah.
And I think I saw that movie like 3 or 4 times before I figured out what the plot of that film was and what was going on, because it's so convoluted.
And for those who don't know, that movie was ripped off by the first Friday the 13th. They took a lot of the kills from that movie
And the
and
second,
Twitch of the Death Nerve?
first and the second. Yeah, yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
Huh.
two of the murders in Friday the 13th Part 2 are directly from Twitch of the Death Nerve,
yeah.
including the scene where the couple gets speared while they're having sex on the bed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Is that the Kevin Bacon scene?
No.
No, that Kevin Bacon's in
different.
the first one.
Oh, the first. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He gets
There is a spear
the
through the
forehead.
bed into Kevin Bacon, but no, in Part 2, there's a couple and they're having sex on a bed, and Jason sneaks up behind them and spears them to the bed with a
Oh, right.
long spear, and it goes all the way
Like
through them
through
and
their
through the bed
chests
into
or
the
something.
floor.
Yeah.
And that's from Bay of Blood, and
That's
so
fucking
is
awesome.
I know, and so is the scene where the guy gets the machete in his face. That happens in Bay of Blood too.
Right. Right. So yeah, definitely got to check that again. I definitely got to watch Phenomena again. I mean, I love the scene where there was a couple of scenes where the bugs saved her. You know, where the girls in the
Yeah.
school were like taunting her to the point where the teacher's just standing around watching it, and you're
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And then finally, the bugs come in, and they're like, "We're not gonna deal with this."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene kind of gave me like a stage play kind of feel, because she was like turning around in circles and they were around her. And then it was like just the wide hardwood floors in that room. And the lighting was so bright, and it just almost seemed like she was dancing at certain points. And then, I don't know. It was kind of cool because it almost like took a little departure from the filmishness and got a tiny bit like a play for a couple of minutes and then went back to I
I
thought
can
the
see that.
windows were gonna break. Like all the bugs got on the windows. I thought they were gonna like cave in, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
like wasn't there a tarantula movie where they all climbed on and the window gave way because it couldn't support the weight of the spiders or something?
I think so. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Kingdom of the Spiders. It might have been.
Was one
The
with
other one?
William Shatner? Wasn't there
No, that was Kingdom of the Spiders.
Oh, I thought okay.
Well, they fell in through the ceiling in
Anyway.
that movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a
It
while.
might have been the Tarantulas, the Deadly Cargo.
Mm.
Bill.
There's a scene like that in Curse of the Black Widow. With Patty Duke Aston and James
Yes.
Franciscus.
Yeah, that's the
He
one I
falls.
think you're
James
thinking of.
Franciscus is investigating an old house, and he falls through the floor and is covered in tarantulas.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can think of that's like that. But Kingdom of the Spiders was one of those kinder trauma films, like that. I was horrified by that when I first saw it as a kid, and years later I watched it again. I'm like, oh, it's just a painting. The scene at the end where they're all covered in cobwebs. And everything.
It's still terrifying though.
It sure is.
But yeah, so as to Phenomena, I love this movie. I definitely, like Mike Hill said, we got to watch this again. It's just so weird and offbeat that it's
There's so many things going on
yeah.
in it that like even that lends itself to the lack of like linear storytelling, where like, what's going on with this girl, and how does she have this like connection to bugs, and what's that all about? And then, oh, there's like somebody over here killing people, and oh, there's this other people doing, it was just like there were points that seemed so, arbitrary, and they were kind of connected, but I don't know.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's not just, if this was an American made movie, it would be about a girl that has a connection with bugs and what
Right.
goes on there. And there's,
Yeah.
like you just said, there's so much more to it. There's a killer, there's all this other stuff going on in and around it. It's not about the linear storytelling. It's about all this
Yeah.
craziness that happens to be going on around this girl, I think.
There's so many beautiful shots in this movie. Like
Yeah.
Argento is always beautiful. I think somebody said I'm going to quote this wrong, but it's like Argento's films are about horrible things happening to beautiful people beautifully.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. He's just one of the most beautifully violent directors that is out there. Even Lucio Fulci went over the top with his violence too, but in a sort of a different way. It's Argento has a sort of thing that's all his own.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I don't think it was this movie. I'm looking through my notes here. There was another one. I don't know. One of the movies that we watched, we're going to talk about tonight, Luigi Cozzi was involved in the film. In fact, it's not in my computer notes here. It's probably my paper notes. But yeah, I
Slugs.
mean, a lot of these Italian guys, they kind of crossed over. I'm surprised that Ennio Morricone hasn't done, or at least as far as I know, hasn't done a horror movie score. I mean, Bill, do you know if he's done one?
Sure, he did Exorcist 2.
Okay, we'll forgive him for that.
It's a beautiful score. And The Thing.
Yes, The Thing, of course. I forgot about that. Yep. John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh yeah, God, I love that music. It's creepy.
Yeah.
I know there's other ones that I'm forgetting. You
So
put me on the
Fox.
spot, Roger.
I was just gonna say, one more thing about the beginning where the girl who's lost, goes to the house and and then she ends up running for her life, and when she dies, like her head goes back through this plate glass in slow motion, and it looks, I don't know if they used stunt glass or what. I hope they did, but it looks like a piece of the glass breaks off and comes right down on her face, like as her head is cocked back. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I hope that actress is okay. Like, it looks so real. It looked
She's
like
fine. She just has a little scar like right across her lips.
Oh, okay. There was quite a few heads. There were like 3 times in this movie where somebody's head went through a plate glass, and I was like, that's cool.
That's Argento for you.
It looked real, It wasn't like, oh, that's Hollywood glass.
Is this the one where the person had like the giant blade on the other person's throat and they were almost going to cut their head off? But
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was like it's a big piece of sheet metal.
Yes, yeah.
And they're just like whipping it around, cutting things off.
Frau Bruckner, Daria Nicolodi, she gets to go screaming batshit crazy over the top at the end, and she's like has this sheet of metal that she decapitates the lawyer with, and then she has Jennifer Connelly on the ground and is going to cut her head off.
And of course, she stops long enough to say, now that I have this weapon against your throat, I'm going to kill you, and blah, 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 blah. And then,
I'm going to talk about it first.
I'm going to talk about it until somebody stops me.
Mm-hmm. And it is the chimp. The chimp comes to the rescue.
The chimp came to the rescue, yeah.
He pulled the straight razor out of the barrel. I thought that was awesome because I'm watching that going, why is he doing that? Why are we seeing this? And then, of course, it came into play. So that was
He was having none of it.
Yeah. As much as, we hate chimps in movies, he was actually pretty cool in this movie. He saved her a couple times.
I don't mean to be pedantic. I thought it was a she.
Yeah,
wasn't the chimp a she?
Oh, she saves
Ella.
Whatever.
I think is her name.
Doesn't really matter, but I mean, I remember him referring to it as she.
No, Ella is the one in Monkey Shine.
Right. Okay.
Oh yeah, but this one did have a name. I forget what it was.
I forgot what it was. I didn't even get it actually. Not that
Chimpy.
I forgot. I didn't even know.
Chimpy the chimp.
Chimpy. Spritle and Chim Chim.
Go Speed. I love how
Why are
it's
you
both
hiding in the
Spritel
trunk
and
of the
Chimp.
car? It's a race car.
Yeah, they were always in the fucking trunk. I mean, like they would have been dead.
Oh my god. All right, folks. So that was our discussion of the movie Phenomena from, what did we say, 1988? No, it was earlier than that.
85.
85.
85, 85. Next up, we're going to talk about Squirm, about killer worms from 1976. So, Michael, are you staying for this discussion or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Ooh.
All right, so the synopsis for Squirm from 1976 is a storm causes some power lines to break and touch the ground, drawing millions of man-eating worms out of the earth and into town where they quickly start munching on the locals.
Because that happens.
Right.
It's well known. You don't feed gremlins after midnight, and you don't let electricity touch the ground in small town. Because if you do, you're going to get an infestation of flesh-eating worms. It's well known.
Let's see if I can have the Bill. If you could call up the director Jeff Lieberman, if you know anything about him, I'm going to call up the picture of. Oh, here we go. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to share it with our folks at home.
Wham! Oh wow!
Here's my I can show this. This
Oh,
is
nice.
my Super 8 reel of Squirm that I got.
Oh my god, it came out on Super 8? Like,
oh yeah.
Wow.
And if you can see, I don't know if you can, it's autographed to Bill from Jeff Lieberman.
wow.
That's awesome, dude.
An apex moment of my life. I met him at the Mahoning Drive-In, and he was super nice. Of course, they were screening Squirm. He actually had one of the rubber worms in a little glass container that they used on the set. So that was interesting.
Wow.
I'm not quite sure if I believe him that was one of the original worms because it was in surprisingly good condition. And there, of course, they were. Did you ever get slime with worms when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
They're just little rubber worms. I can't imagine those things held up very well from 1976. But what do I know? I wasn't there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this Super 8 of Squirm changed my life because I ordered it out of a catalog after my parents bought me a movie projector. And this is the only way I ever would have been able to see something as gruesome as Squirm, ordering it sight unseen. But I kind of knew what it was about. And this has maybe like about 15 minutes worth of the movie on it. So I didn't understand that as a kid, that these little reels didn't contain the whole film. So I was a little disappointed. But regardless, like this served me well over the years. I watched it so many times. And one of the best experiences I ever had was, I think I was maybe about like 12, 13 years old. And a friend of mine had a younger sister who was in the Girl Scouts, and his whole family was active in the Scouts. And there was a Girl Scout sleepover, and he knew I had a movie projector, and he was like, would you bring your movie projector to the Girl Scout sleepover and show some of your movies? And I had like Woody Woodpecker cartoons and stuff like that. So, and I had Star Wars. I had a Super 8 reel of Star Wars. So I showed them the Star Wars, and the last thing I showed them was this Squirm. And the screams in that room were just astonishing. It was like an NSYNC concert. It was amazing. So that was one of the happiest moments of my childhood.
That's awesome.
Showing Squirm to a pack of Girl Scouts. I told Jeff Lieberman that, and he approved.
And they were having a sleepover, right? So you were like, all right, good night.
Yeah.
Pleasant dreams.
And that's 16? 16 millimeter?
No, 8.
Oh, it's 8. Okay. Hold
8
on.
millimeter.
That's
Oh,
what I
yeah,
was asking, 'cause
Super 8.
I have
Super
the
8.
Blob, which is 8
Ooh.
millimeter.
Wow.
And it's the same thing. It's like 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
But I never had a projector, so I never actually watched it. So my co-host on Then Is Now has like a conversion thing, so he's going to convert it for me at some point.
It's probably on YouTube. There's a lot of Super 8 digest versions on YouTube. I think the one for Squirm is on there. And definitely, we just watched Mako Jaws of Death on the show not too long ago, a shark movie from 75 by Bill Griffey.
Okay.
And his Super 8 digest version is on YouTube.
Mako Jaws of Death.
I'm trying to think if that's the one I saw. I saw an Italian shark movie in the theater, but it might have been more like 78.
Tintorera.
That might have been it. Yeah,
Wait, so the film was Italian or the shark was Italian?
No,
both.
it's a Mexican film actually, but I bet that's the one you saw if it was 78. It was Tintorera.
I know Rod Barnett did a voice. Sorry, a comment on that commentary on the Blu-ray. I don't think it was that. It was trying to remember now. I forget. My parents took me to all kinds of horror movies growing up, so I
Yeah.
just remember there was one that was like a Jaws ripoff. There was something to do with like um I remember like a fake leg hanging off out of the shark's mouth as it was biting it.
Wow, are you talking about Great White from
Great White.
1981?
That's it. That's it. Great White.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
were one of the lucky ones that saw it before Universal sued them and they had to pull it from the theaters.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, Great White. That was the movie. Because I know I didn't see Tintorera. I was like, I don't know.
Tintorera is basically porn with a Jaws plot. It's
nice.
amazing. Susan George is in it. So is oh,
It's a Mexican film.
it is, yeah. Susan George is in it, and so is Priscilla Barnes from
Oh wow,
Three's
from Three's
Company.
Company. Yeah.
She's in it. There's another
Mm.
Fiona Lewis has a small role in it too. She was that dark beauty who was in Dead and Buried
Okay.
and
Yeah.
a couple other films. Strange Behavior she was in. Anyway,
Interesting. So I'm gonna show the if I can share things because this is not letting me do things. Share screen. Oh yeah, here we go.
Computer's being weird.
We're gonna share this iconic picture of the dude with the worms coming out of his face.
Yes.
Now, Michael, do you remember seeing this even if you never saw the movie before?
No,
oh, you never saw this?
I had never seen it until I watched like the first half hour last night with sound, and then today while I was doing other stuff, working on my laptop, I had it on the screen in front of me, but I had it muted because I was working, but I could still see basically what was happening. But
Right, and we were
no.
texting, and I was like, "You don't really need the sound to watch this movie."
Yeah, it's like I think I could get the gist of what's happening. But I did want to because I'm one of those people that like I like to hear all the dialogue and see like what people's attitudes are in the different scenes. But yeah, I was in a position where it was like either not watch it at all or watch it with the. This is another movie where there were a couple of things that happened out of the blue that I didn't see coming.
And I have in my notes actually for all three films that there are so many oh my god moments in these movies, and this was
Yeah.
one of them.
Like the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tree falling through the house. They're all sitting there at the dining table.
That happened for
What do you think?
real, by the way.
Huh?
I mean, that was real. I mean, they made the tree fall, of course, and the actors knew it was going to happen, but that wasn't simulated. That tree really did fall through that house, and he
Wow.
filmed the inside of the house as it happened.
That was
Holy crap.
that was great. And then they go outside and they see that the roots were weakened because of the worms. Yeah. That's why it
Makeup
fell.
maestro Rick Baker was behind that worm face thing with the worms crawling into the
Ah.
guy's face, and he did the makeup effects for this film.
That
Right.
doesn't
Okay.
surprise me.
I think I knew that. I think I heard that a long time ago. I just kind of forgot it. But yeah, that makes sense because. But what's interesting about this movie is that the worms don't just kill you. Like in this guy's case that we showed the picture of, they mutate you. He got mutated and became. It reminded me of that movie with Dirk Benedict, you know, from the A Team and Battlestar Galactica. It was called,
Oh yeah,
where he turned into a snake.
yeah.
Ah.
And oh, Michael, you got to see that movie. I mean, if you're a Dirk Benedict completist like I am,
And who isn't?
And who
You
is
know,
it? Right.
what was the other one? He was the Vietnam vet. Raw was it Raw Meat? No, Ruckus.
Meat.
Ruckus.
Ruckus.
He was. It was like Rambo, First Blood kind of movie. He's a Vietnam vet that comes back home, and like the first scene, he goes up to this counter to order a hamburger, and they're like, "How would you like it?" And he's like, "Raw." He's just so frazzled from being in Vietnam that he orders his meat raw for some
Yeah.
reason. But then he ends up saving the town from bad guys. But no, in the movie's it's literally called it's like SSSSS, and he's this
It's a really good
dude
title.
that who is oh my god, who was the scientist in it, Bill? It was
Strother Martin.
Brother Martin. Thank you. And he's like injecting people with stuff, and he injects Dirk Benedict with this serum that turns him into a snake. That literally turns him into like a snake. Which that's we'll talk about that movie, I suppose, at some point because there's a disappointing moment in that film. But
What disappointing moment are you talking about,
well,
Roger?
he turns into an actual snake. He doesn't turn into like the snake with the mass of a human. Like a huge snake. He turns into like this tiny little cobra or whatever.
True.
Oh,
true.
really?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, really?
A king
that's what
cobra. It's a respectable size snake. It's a king cobra.
I suppose, but I mean, if you're gonna convert mass, convert it properly and have him be like a giant king cobra.
Roger, this
Right,
movie
right.
really didn't happen.
No,
It's not
but in this
based on
movie, it
actual
reminded me of
science.
that because the guy gets bit by all the worms, and then he becomes like this worm dude. And I think doesn't that happen again in the movie, or am I thinking of Slugs that we haven't
I
talked about?
think he's the only guy
Yeah, he's the only one in
Okay.
Squirm.
Okay.
It's established early on that he has this obsessive love for Patricia Piercy's character, and he's very resentful of Don Scardino, who comes to this tiny little Georgia town to hunt for antiques and to romance this girl that he's had his eye on for so long. So, it turns into like this romantic a love triangle where one of the guys just happens to be infested with worms.
Right.
Happens.
That actor, his name was R.A. Dow, and he
Yep.
lobbied hard for that role.
He was
And
Roger.
someone who also lobbied for that role was Sylvester Stallone.
Really?
He did, yeah. He really wanted that part, and
Huh.
Jeff Lieberman hired R.A. Dow instead of Sylvester Stallone. But R.A. Dow went to this town in Georgia where they shot Squirm and lived there for 2 weeks just to like live with the locals and
Huh.
like absorb the local, you know, uh,
Flavor.
accent and like to get the atmosphere. He was committed. It was a method performance, and this movie is no joke. It seems kind of the first time you watch it, because I grew up, of course, with the digest version, which has all of the shock moments in it, and I didn't understand that this movie is really sort of a slow burn. There's
Oh
not a
yeah.
whole lot that happens. Like the worm freak out moments are paced throughout the movie pretty sporadically. And
Yeah.
until the end, which is an absolutely bravura finale, you really don't know how far the movie is going to go with showing you all the worm stuff. But then,
Yeah.
I mean, Lieberman made magic happen in this film because this was not a big budget film. There were scenes with rooms filling up with worms, and what he did was on that set in the house, he built a platform that went to like about halfway up the room and put like worms on top of the platform, and there were all these Cub Scouts underneath of it that were like pushing up on the canvases to make the worms look like they were writhing around.
Wow.
And I mean, this was ingenious stuff that he did to get those unforgettable images, because of course there was no such thing as CGI. You couldn't just
Right.
type it
Yeah.
up on a little computer cartoon.
And I was going to say that about Phenomena that we just talked about was, with the bug landing on her hand and you see the close up. I mean, that was no CGI. That was somehow they trained a real bug to do that.
Yeah.
And like you said, they got these worms. There was a point where I was talking to Michael today. We were texting each other, and I was going to send him a text that's Mike. I was going to send you a text that said, "Oh my God, there's a moment where the shit hits the fan," and it was like all of a sudden worms just fucking coming out of every place, like the two
Everywhere.
people having sex, and the girl's like, "What's going on?" "Oh, there's nothing," and then the worms are like eating her. She's like, "Stop touching me." He's like, "I'm not touching you, honey."
Stop doing that.
Yeah.
The
They're like
shower.
screwing in a jail cell. It's pretty kinky. I like it.
The shower thing,
Oh.
where she's in the shower. Like I looked up from what I was doing, and she's in the shower. She's like turning the knobs to get the water. I think she doesn't look up at first. She's like
No.
focused on, I guess, waiting for the water to come out of the tub faucet. And the little things, they start hanging out of the shower space, the head. And she's like, I mean, any normal person would glance up, right? It's just like a normal thing, but she's so focused downward. And then she turns the knobs the other way and they go,
They
and
go
then she
back
looks
in,
up
yeah.
and they're not there. And I was like, what? I thought she was about to get like worms in her hair or something.
But he didn't let you down. He did show you an entire bathroom full of worms.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it came later, but I was like, I thought that was her moment to go.
Poor Alma. She goes up to wash her face and she gets bathed. She lives though. That's pretty amazing to me because in the digest version they cut out the part where she comes out of the chest. Like you realize that Alma survived. She managed to get to this big crate and go inside of it and hide from the worms. But in the digest version they don't show you that. So I always thought she died.
And those two girls were so dumb.
Which two girls?
The Alma and the sister, the two sisters there. They were like,
Jerry?
yeah, they were like, I don't know. They was just one was dumber than the other. And then, oh, here comes Roger. And he was dumb as they were.
I didn't think they were dumb. I thought Alma was cute. Like Jerry was obviously the older sister that she was
Yeah.
envious of, and she wanted to be so cool. Like she was reading all those magazines, and she thought she was going to impress Mick. But she really knew how to take care of you. The first thing she does when they're alone, she pulls out a joint and offers him a J. So she knows that is Southern hospitality right there.
That's true. I'll give you that.
And she had some good shit too, because she was living out in the country. So this was no joke.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is one of those movies I saw when I was a kid on TV, and I just remembered. I never forget the worms coming out of Roger's face. But one of the cool things that I loved was that they had the station wagon like I had up until a couple of years ago.
Oh, you were driving a station wagon until recently?
Until recently, I had a Buick Roadmaster with the wood paneling on the side and everything. It was
I
blue,
knew I
just
loved
like
you
that
for
one.
a reason.
Wow.
I only had to get rid of it because it got to the point where I couldn't afford to fix it like the way it needed to be, and I was able to sell it to a guy that actually was going to restore it to its proper glory. So I wasn't going to junk the thing.
Glory.
But the exact same thing,
Oh my
I mean,
God.
that's a perfect drive-in movie theater going vehicle
Oh,
with the
definitely.
family.
Definitely. Station wagon. That's
Yeah.
where it's at.
You
Yeah,
back
if
it
you're-
up, you inflate the
going to a-
mattress,
Yeah.
got the
There's
pillows
a couple
and
of people that
blankets.
come in a hearse to the Monsterama. There were one year there were 2 hearses, believe it or
Really?
not. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's
And if you had one of those cars where the window went down in the way back of the station wagon, you didn't necessarily have to pull in backwards, because you could sit with your butt on the, like, lower the window and sit with your butt on the top of the where the window went down, and put your arms on the roof.
Oh,
and
yeah.
look
Oh, yeah.
forward and what. That's what I did that a couple of times. I remember.
That's funny. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Don't your legs fall asleep though?
Yeah, but they'll just be up all night. So
squirm around and move
Squirm.
around. I don't know how I dealt with that, but I did do it that way sometimes. Yeah.
I have to admit, on a different note, this movie, when I first started watching it, and I know, like I said, I had seen this before a few times over the years, especially when I was a kid, but I would, for some reason, walking into it, I kept confusing it with frogs. And I was like, no, Ray Milland is not in this movie.
He's not.
You have so much content in your brain that it's getting blended together.
Yeah,
They were both distributed by American International Pictures though.
that's probably what it was. Yeah. But,
That's what it is. The distributor made you confuse
Yeah.
the two films.
This movie was a huge hit. I mean, Squirm played
really
drive-ins and theaters for a couple of years.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there was definitely some stuff but it is a slow burn. So like, you have to really be invested in like staying with it. Because there are scenes, the scene before, I mean, there were long dialogue scenes, but the scene before the tree comes into the house where they're like about to serve dinner, the girls are talking to each other in the kitchen, and they come out, and that shot of them like walking through the room to put the food on the table, it's like 20 seconds of dead silence while they just walk. I mean, as slowly you would think they were carrying like bowls of soup or something. They were so slow. I was like, what are you doing? Hey, sit down and eat. Maybe that was to build tension before the tree fell or something. I don't know.
Well, it was adding to that Southern Gothic flavor that this has, especially the mother's performance is amazing. Jean Sullivan, the actress who portrays her. It's a little bit like Jessica Tandy in The Birds, where her character is the older person in the cast, and she's slowly losing her grip, and like they're trying to make sure she doesn't go too far over the top, and eventually of course she does crack, and the last thing you see of her is she's been consumed by the worms, and she never stopped knitting.
Right.
Like she was knitting and she just sat there while the worms ate her and was
Yeah.
knitting.
Damn it, I'm gonna finish this scarf if it kills me.
And there was one scene earlier where they were the sheriff guy and the mom there and somebody else who were all sitting eating and talking, and they were eating like spaghetti or noodles or something. And they're like, while they're talking, just like putting them in their mouth, and the one guy's pointing with his fork, and there's a little piece hanging off of it. I was like, I don't need that imagery right now. You know, we're infested with worms, and they're eating spaghetti.
During that scene, I was thinking, oh, I'd rather be in the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs than this movie.
Seriously.
That was the sheriff and his girlfriend. They're eating in a restaurant, and Mick and Jerry, of course, they're trying to convince all the adults in the town that something bad is happening. And
Yeah.
they run in there to talk to him, and he just won't have anything to do with them. Oh, I love the scene in the diner, which is the classic like Deliverance style, like, you know, locals versus the city slicker, where he comes in there and he's just like gives her all this sass, supposedly like he brings sort of like a New York attitude into this little small town diner.
Is that when he ordered like the egg shake or something?
An egg cream.
Egg cream, yeah. And there was a worm in it.
Yeah.
And he spills it all over the counter.
And then the sheriff, he gives him that whole first blood kind of attitude, and it was like, dude, serious? He's like, would you have to go and make a joke like that for, son? And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There was a worm in my drink.
He's great, of course. Peter McLean. He's the one that's doing it in the jail cell with his girlfriend and gets eaten.
Yeah.
There were some really funny little like moments, like when the forgive me, the redheaded girl and the main guy from New York are outside at one point, and the sheriff guy like points his finger at the guy's chest, and he's like tells him whatever, blah blah blah, don't even. And then he goes to walk away, and the guy the guy and the girl look at each other, and he starting to imitate what the guy just did to him. And the guy turns around, and they're both like, you know,
Don Scardino. He went on to become a director. He's done a lot of things. He's done a lot of TV. Don Scardino, and he was also in Cruising. If you've ever seen Cruising with Al Pacino.
Oh yeah.
William Friedkin film. He was in Cruising. A couple other things I've seen Don Scardino in. I was really excited because I'm really into old time radio.
Oh yeah.
Radio shows, like, and there was an episode of CBS Radio Mystery Theater that he did, and I was like, tonight's cast includes Don Scardino. I'm like, oh, it's Mick from Squirm.
I think I have all those on one of my hard drives somewhere.
But the actors weren't bad. I have to confess, when the movie started, I thought, oh, this is going to be one of those movies where like the people can't even act their way out of a paper bag, you know. But it wasn't bad. They weren't like, you know, Oscar worthy, but it was good. They were like believable, and there was enough, you know, I don't know, the facial expressions and the little mannerisms and stuff. It was, you know, I'm picky about that kind of thing. So
they looked authentic to me. You know, they were very authentic. And, you know, the people in the diner, I was starting to say, is those were all real people that lived in that little town.
Really?
So yeah, none of those were actors in the diner, including the waitress.
She was kind of hot.
She was really there. She really worked there.
Oh wow. I thought she was an actress because she kind of looked like an actress, and maybe they foofed her hair up or something, but I was like, she's kind of hot.
They probably gave her that hairdo, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a little humid in Fly Creek to be having a beehive like that.
I suppose, yeah.
That's funny. All right, folks. So that was our discussion of Squirm. And next up on our slate is the movie Slugs from 1988. And what we are going to take a break here because I have to go to the little podcaster's room.
And I'm gonna bail because I haven't seen this one. So
Okay.
I'm gonna take my leave.
All right, Bill, I'll be right back.
Okay,
See
do
you
your
guys
thing.
later.
Bye,
We're
Michael.
not live, so
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, we're not. Okay. Well, bye. See you next time, Bill.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
All right. All right, so we'll just jump back into this next one here. Okay, folks, we're back and we're going to talk about Slugs from 1988. And as I said at the top of the show, originally I couldn't remember the name of the movie. I was thinking the movie I had watched that I wanted to talk about was Blue Monkey, so we'll talk about that on another show. But today we're going to talk about Slugs. And basically, the synopsis is killer slugs on the rampage in a rural community, which you can't sum it up better than that.
That's about all there is to say about the plot of Slugs.
What's funny is like because when it opens up, right, the music that they play is on a I have like a horror Halloween CD, and that was the theme song that was on the CD. And I was watching it going, wait, I know this theme from something. And then I remembered what it was from. It's like, and it's like, I think it might be in the public domain. I could be wrong. Do you know anything about that, Bill?
I'm not sure. I know that Lionsgate put it out, and there was a more recent Blu-ray release. I'm not sure what company put out Slugs on Blu-ray, but yeah, I don't think it's in the public domain. It's a Spanish film.
Yeah.
The director is the same guy who made the movie Pieces,
Oh, right.
which you may remember as
Yep.
being a notorious, um, one of those movies that everyone who said how awful horror movies were for society, they were really talking about movies like Pieces.
Yeah, he did a couple others too. He did The Rift and Supersonic Man.
Yeah, I'm not really all that familiar with those.
Yeah, I know the names. I don't know if I've seen them or not, but this movie had Michael Garfield and Kim Terry and Philip McHale, none of whom I know from anything. But Michael Garfield plays Mike Brady in this, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, Mike Brady. Well, the strange thing is, it was filmed in the United States. It
Oh,
was filmed in New
interesting.
York.
Really? I didn't know that.
And
That's
what did you say?
I no, I just said that's interesting. I didn't know that because it definitely had an American vibe to it. I didn't even know it was a Spanish film until you just told me that. So
Yeah. Yeah, you would never know that it was filmed I mean, that it was a Spanish production, at least, based on there really isn't anybody. It does sort of have an Italian feel to it, though. I think you even said earlier that it was an Italian film. Is that
yeah,
what it seems like to you? Because
yeah,
that's what I thought it was too, the first time I saw it.
yeah. And this was one like I was saying, like the film I thought I was we were gonna talk about, I had never heard of, but this one I had heard of and I had seen it a couple times.
Hmm.
Uh, but I didn't know that. Especially with the guy getting his hand cut off, or he cuts his own hand off. That was pretty wild.
Yeah, it's got some unforgettable images in it.
Oh yeah. What was the other one? The couple having sex and then the slugs kill them.
Yeah, that's the one that's most like Squirm.
Yes.
Like if you want to compare it to Squirm, then that's probably the one scene that's gonna make you remember Squirm. Just the way that they're consumed by this. Although he was not able to get the same effects that Jeff Lieberman got, which really did seem like this inundation happened to the characters. They were consumed by a sea of worms. He wasn't quite able to pull that off, but it's still pretty good.
So this being 1988, would you consider this sort of the end of the animals versus man kind of series of films? I mean, we had a lot of them. We had what was it? Um, oh my God, what was the one with Leslie Nielsen where they were in
Day
the
of the
mountains?
Animals.
Oh, Day of the Animals. Yep. And then there was so many man versus animal movies, like where nature was striking back against us for a long time in the 70s, and I guess until I'm going to say till the 80s. So would you say this was sort of the end of that era of films?
Maybe towards the end of the first cycle. I mean, it continued into the early 90s. Really, killer animal movies never stopped being made because Shakma was from 1990. We just watched that last night on the program, and it was, that was a 1990 film. So, I mean, you could consider that the same animal nature strikes back kind of thing. That was scientific experimentation on primates,
Right.
which was one of the issues that a lot was on a lot of people's minds in the 80s. There was a lot of animal activism that happened in the 80s that brought to light a lot of the inhumane ways that animals were experimented on. So Shakma sort of taps into that. It's just of the time. In the 70s, everyone was into environmentalism. That was on the rise. The Sierra Club became a big thing, and so the eco horror genre became more prominent as those concerns became more prominent.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the Prophecy, not to be confused with the one with Christopher Walken, where he plays the angel Gabriel trying to start a second war in heaven. But the Prophecy from, what was it, 78, I think, 78 or
79.
79. Yeah, with Talia Shire, and like the giant bear was inside out because of the mercury that was in the water. I mean,
Poor
there was a
thing.
lot of that going on. I mean, you had what? Oh my God, there's just so many of them. I can't even name them all. It was, I mean, of course, there was the the food of the gods. Probably was sort of the beginning of that, but then you had all kinds of like giant rats and the
Kingdom of the
grizzly bears and
Spiders was
what was it?
Kingdom of the Spiders, we
Kingdom of the
already
Spiders.
mentioned.
Yep.
Willard,
Willard. Yep.
that was 71.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frogs
That's
was 72.
yeah. Frogs. That's such a good one too. We're gonna have to cover that one at some point because
I love frogs.
Ray Milland and what's his name? The action movie guy.
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott, yes. A young Sam
Yeah.
Elliott with no mustache.
Yes. And a noticeable trouser snake. And
Yeah.
also Adam Rourke, who was in one of the biker movies for AIP. He was sort of like he was a prominent character in Slugs. Joan Van Ark
Yep.
is in Slugs.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, Frogs.
Frogs.
Not
Yeah.
Slugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole. You mentioned frogs, and you brought that all out of me.
Well, and it's funny when you say it was a Spanish production, you go down the cast, right? So you got Michael Garfield, Kim Terry, Philip McHale, Alicia Morrow. Then you go to Santiago Alvarez, Concha Cuetos, Frank Brana, Patty Shepard.
Patty Shepard, who was in Werewolf versus Vampire Woman.
That's right. That's right. Oh my God. I mean, there's not a lot. I didn't take a whole heck of a lot of notes on this movie because it was, like we said, it was kind of the same as Squirm in terms of the people fighting the things, but it was still enjoyable. I mean, I loved this movie from beginning to end. It was just so, I was just engaged through the whole movie.
Yeah, it's an idea whose time had come
Yeah.
at this time in the 80s. Like there had been so many other animals that came before it and little insects. Like you mentioned, Food of the Gods. There were some killer worms in that one who had
Yep.
grown to giant size. And there was also the killer worms in Squirm, like we mentioned. So Slugs was the next natural progression. It was only a
Like,
matter of
what's the
time.
next most disgusting animal that we can use as a villain in a movie?
How could we imagine being killed by slugs? Fulci kind of did that in Demonia,
Yeah.
the killer, the nunsploitation. I think it was in Demonia where a character is. I don't even know if she's consumed by slugs. She's just lying naked in bed, and then all of a sudden she's covered in slugs.
Yeah.
Snails. They're snails.
Is it, well, slugs are snails with no shell, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
A slug wouldn't want to be called a snail and vice versa.
I just remember that from an old Charlie Brown cartoon where they were like jumping in leaves. It's like, you don't want to get covered in slugs.
Ew. Or leeches.
Oh my God.
That's one of my favorite parts in Frogs is when the lady is out chasing the butterfly in the swamp and she falls into a puddle and ends up immersed, covered in leeches.
Yeah. What was it African Queen where Humphrey Bogart comes out of the water and he's got leeches all over him and they pour
Mm-hmm.
powder on him to get the leeches off?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can happen.
I mean, hey, barbers used to be doctors and they would use leeches to bleed you out if you had an ailment. So,
Shows you what they knew.
this is-
People still use maggots though in therapy. There's still maggot therapy. Like if you have gangrene, they'll put medical maggots on you to eat
Ew.
all the dead flesh because they only eat the dead flesh. They wouldn't eat the living flesh.
And that was a big thing in phenomena that we didn't touch upon was that what was it they were the sarcophagus maggots or something or
Yeah,
and that was a big deal and that was the same exact thing is that they would use the maggots on dead flesh or at least in that movie they were saying that the maggots were attracted to dead flesh. But I think I've heard of that actually. Now that you mention that, I kind of have heard of that. That's interesting. I mean, so can you imagine? Now you get your medical dog that you have to take into the store, and they can't refuse you because you have a medical dog. Now I've got medical maggots.
medical maggots. They do it to you in the hospital, Roger. You don't get to take them home.
I'm gonna walk into the store with maggots on my hand and go, "These are my medical friends. I need them."
If you need them in public, you shouldn't be in public.
That was the other thing in Phenomena too, was she put her hand into the glove, and when she took it out, and like they did like a close up of her fingernail with the maggot coming out of it. And in fact, I wrote it in my notes, but then I changed it because they actually explained that it was those sarcophagus maggots or something. But that was disgusting. But that was how they knew they were on the trail of the killer because they
Right.
had the killer's gloves, or she had the killer's gloves, Jennifer Connelly, right?
Yeah, there's some kind of plot there. I'm too I'm too wrapped up in the beauty of it all.
The beauty of the maggots. So I guess there's not a whole heck of a lot else we could talk about the movie Slugs, except to say that it's kind of an enjoyable third film in this trilogy that we've talked about today with Phenomena and Squirm. I mean,
It
just
kind of reminds me of a trauma film, the way that it's comedy horror.
yeah,
And there's a really funny shot. There's a close up of a slug biting somebody's finger, and the slug you see has a mouth, an actual mouth, like any other kind of like mammal. It has this mouth that opens up with sharp teeth. So they have to show you a close up of what these slugs can actually do to a
right.
human being, and it's not pretty.
My wife the other day we were talking about something and she's like, "Well, don't flies like eat their food and puke it up on you?" And I had to think back to the Cronenberg version of the fly and I was like, "No, they actually puke on the food, melt it and then suck it up with their proboscis, They get a straw for a nose or a mouth."
That was how Brundlefly ate.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. Yeah. So, what was the oh, and I know I've seen it many times. What was the Italian horror film where the tarantulas ate the guy's face off?
That's the Beyond.
The Beyond. Yeah. Okay. I remember seeing that. Like I had seen it prior to that when it was called Seven Doors of Death, I think. And
Yeah.
then they finally released it when it came out in the like it was the special DVD case that was like the metal case. And they released it in the theater. In fact, I may have video coverage of it somewhere. We covered it at a movie theater in Massachusetts when they finally released it as The Beyond, and it was the full uncut version of that film. And that's a fun movie. I love that movie.
It was in the late 90s. That was Quentin Tarantino who got that released under his ti distribution label Rolling Thunder
Right.
Pictures. And that was I think it was a midnight movie when it
Yes.
came out. I actually saw it not as part of that reissue. Somebody got a hold of a print and did it like in the earlier part of the 90s, and that's the first time I saw it. I've seen it two or three times on the big screen. And it's not even one of my favorite films. It's sort of sacrilegious to say that you're not crazy about the Beyond, but I don't know. It was never really one of my favorite Fulcis. Zombie is my favorite Fulci.
Yeah.
and Zombie, House by the Cemetery, Lizard in a Woman's Skin. There's a lot more that I love before the Beyond, but it's it's not terrible. It's just, I never really connected with the Beyond, but I did see it a couple of times. I saw it at the Warhol Museum
Oh
on the
wow.
big screen too.
Nice.
That was
What's the
fun.
one now? What's the one where the woman pukes up her guts at the end?
Gates of Hell.
Gates of Hell. All right, because
That's
I always
City of the
confuse
Living
those movies.
Dead.
Which one?
It's known as City of the Living Dead
City of the Living Dead. Right. Okay.
originally, but in the States it was called Gates of Hell. There
Yeah.
was a distributor called MPM Films that put that out, and they were going to call it Twilight of the Dead. And they made it look like a Romero sequel. Like there was an ad that ran in the LA Times as Twilight of the Dead.
Oh
It
wow.
had like that logo of Dawn of the Dead, and Romero and Rubenstein got a cease and desist, and they had to change the title.
Right, because I had heard that Romero wanted the fourth film in the trilogy to be Twilight of the Dead, right?
I think so. I mean, that would have been the natural thing for them
Yeah.
to have done,
Night, dawn,
but
day, twilight. Yeah.
that was the only time of day they had left. High noon of the dead.
Dusk of the Dead.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was the second time that happened to Romero, because the distributors who were releasing Messiah of Evil, someone acquired Messiah of Evil as a property to distribute, and they decided to change the title to Return of the Living Dead, and they put it out in 1978, the end of 1978, when Dawn of the Dead. It didn't play in the States until 79, Dawn of the Dead.
Right, right, yeah.
And but it was in Italy, and it was released in Europe in 78. But somehow they knew that the tagline was going to be, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And this distributor that had Messiah of Evil put it out as Return of the Living Dead and used that tagline.
Hmm.
And there were ads that ran, and the lettering was just like Night of the Living Dead, and they used the ad from Night of the Living Dead and just changed the title to Return of the Living Dead. And they of course got a cease and desist for that too, and they had to change the title for that one. They were always having to defend their Living Dead property.
Yeah. Yeah. That sucked because I forget now the whole story, but he didn't copyright it at the end, right, of the movie or something, or there was something, I don't know. Can you explain that?
Yeah, they didn't put a copyright notice on the original print of Night of the Living Dead because it had another title first. Night of the Flesh Eaters.
That's right. Yeah.
It was also known as Night of Anubis, but for some reason or another, they changed the title a couple of times, and by the time it became Night of the Living Dead, they didn't put a copyright notice on that print, so nobody could claim it, I guess, as a property. It was just public domain for the minute it was out there.
And around that time, there were a couple other films that had Living Dead in the title, too, if I remember correctly. I think there was a British film with Christopher Lee, right?
Castle of the Living Dead.
Maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, so they had a lot of issues. And then, yeah, like you said, poor George Romero had to defend that title down through the ages, down
Yeah.
through the decades.
Well, I don't think there were other movies known as something of the Living Dead, but these were people that attacked their particular series and were trying to make it look like they had a sequel that was part of the Romero legacy.
Right,
They were marketing their film this way. So
right.
that's what they were defending. They just didn't want somebody grabbing on their coattails, which I don't
Right.
blame them. Like you have to put a stop to that somewhere, especially when they steal your tagline. That's
Oh,
a
yeah,
no-no.
yeah. What was the other one? There were Fangs of the Living Dead, I think, came out around Night of the Living Dead.
Fangs of the Living Dead was originally, it was 69.
Yeah,
That was another Spanish film by Armando de Osorio.
right,
But by the time it came out in the States, it was part of a triple feature known as Orgy of the Living Dead. And
right.
all of the movies had Living Dead in the title. It was like Curse of the Living Dead, which was Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill, and Revenge of the Living Dead, which was a movie called The Murder Clinic. It was sort of a Giallo-esque film called Murder Clinic, and the film known as Fangs of the Living Dead, which was a Spanish film originally known as Malenka, the vampire's niece.
Right.
So
Okay. Yeah.
that was 73 when that triple feature happened, and
God,
those
those are the
films
days.
played under those titles. Like they would cut that triple feature apart and just ship those features out to be like the third feature on so many triple features in so many drive-ins across the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
I no kidding. I was just saying that. Those were the days, man. Like I told you, I saw Asylum in 1972 when I was 2 years old in the backseat of my parents' car, and I will never forget that. I have vivid memories of that
You
movie.
mean Chopping Heads?
Chopping Heads. Oh, you remembered. That's awesome. For years, my mother couldn't remember the name of that movie. We called it Chopping Heads, and I forget where I figured it out. But then I happened to be there was a video store, and it was around the time where the video stores were closing down, and they had a sidewalk sale, and that Asylum was there on VHS, and I'm for like $3. I'm like, I gotta have this. This, it's part of my childhood. I still have it.
Of course.
So next time we'll probably talk about, if we can, we'll talk about Blue Monkey and Slither with Nathan Fillion. I don't know if you've seen that, Bill.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And then maybe you could pick one more, and we'll go from there.
I know what one I want to do already.
What is it? Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. If you want to know. Yeah. Can we do They Came From Within, Cronenberg's They Came From Within, aka Shivers,
Oh yes, yes.
another killer slug movie, sort
There you
of.
go. All right, we'll do that, man.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. Thank you for joining me. Sorry I couldn't go live. We'll figure this out.
Hey, it happens.
Shit happens. All right, I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay.
All
Take
right,
care.
bye.
Bye.